I froze in place, the words echoing in my mind even as my body betrayed no hint of recognition. They laughed, my husband and his mother, speaking in German, a language I had mastered long before I met him. Pathetic, she said, her voice sharp and amused. Simple, he added, as if confirming her assessment. Useful for now, she concluded, and I felt the cold punch of betrayal slam into my chest. I had never imagined that behind his charming smile and quiet reassurances, he harboured such contempt for me. Every memory of our shared life suddenly felt tainted, hollow, as though I had been living beside a stranger I barely knew. I forced myself to breathe evenly, to maintain the facade of ignorance. My mind raced, cataloguing every slight, every dismissive glance I had brushed off as inconsequential. How long had this been going on? Weeks? Months? Years? Had he really been laughing at me behind my back while pretending to be the loving partner I had trusted implicitly? My stomach twisted with a mixture of anger, shock, and disbelief. Stepping back quietly, I slipped out of the room without a sound. Each step was deliberate, measured, as though I could will myself into normalcy. I reached the hallway and leaned against the wall, heart hammering, every nerve on edge. Part of me wanted to storm back, to demand an explanation, to confront him with the full weight of his treachery. But I held myself back. I needed control. I needed to think before acting. Anger bubbled beneath the surface, a slow-burning fire that refused to be quenched. The more I replayed the words in my mind, the more the image of him and his mother, laughing together at my expense, seared itself into my memory. I reminded myself to remain calm, to hide the storm inside me, because what they didn't know was that I understood every word, every nuance, every cruel inflection. Their laughter, meant to belittle me, now fueled a determination I hadn't felt before. I retreated further down the corridor, seeking refuge in the quiet of the apartment. Alone, I allowed myself a brief moment of release, the silent tears slipping down my cheeks, a mixture of grief and fury. My life, as I had known it, suddenly seemed fragile and deceptive. The man I had vowed to trust, the life we had built together, all of it had been undercut by his words, by his thoughtless cruelty. My mind raced with possibilities, plans forming and shifting, as though instinctively I knew I couldn't let this pass unaddressed. And yet, despite the ache in my chest, despite the humiliation and betrayal, a small, resolute part of me began to crystallize. I would not allow him to know the depth of the storm he had unleashed. I would move with precision, patience, and cunning. The anger would be channeled, transformed into strategy, and the truth would eventually surface, in a way that would leave him completely unprepared. I inhaled deeply, steadying myself. The mask of calm settled back over my face, concealing the fire that burned inside. I walked back toward the kitchen, pretending as though I had been occupied elsewhere, unbothered, oblivious. They would continue their plotting, unaware that their target had not only heard, but understood everything. I would wait, observe, and gather every detail, every slip, every secret, until the moment was right. I remember the early days as vividly as if they happened yesterday. He would open doors for me, kiss my forehead in the morning, and leave little notes on the counter that made my heart swell. There was a charm about him, an attentiveness that made me feel seen, adored, special. I thought I had found a partner who genuinely valued me, someone who would stand beside me through life's chaos. I felt lucky, as though the universe had finally aligned, placing a kind, intelligent man in my path to protect and cherish me. Looking back now, those moments of tenderness feel almost like a cruel joke, a carefully constructed illusion. I remember laughing at his jokes, feeling proud when he praised my cooking or admired my work, blissfully unaware that each compliment came alongside subtle dismissals. Small manipulations I had misread as quirks. There were moments, fleeting and almost imperceptible, when he would shrug off my opinions, joke about my accent in front of friends, or avoid inviting me to gatherings I had been looking forward to. I told myself it was nothing, that he was teasing in a playful, harmless way, that I was overthinking it. And yet, as I replay these memories in my mind, the cracks in the facade begin to show. The dinners where he seemed distant, the small sarcasms about my family, the way he would redirect conversations when I tried to speak passionately about something meaningful. All of it takes on a new weight. The warmth I remembered is now tinged with the cold reality of manipulation. I see now that he had been shaping my perception, controlling the narrative, slowly ensuring that I would remain the unassuming, compliant partner he preferred. It's a strange, painful contrast. The man I believed I loved versus the man whose betrayal I would soon uncover. Every smile, every tender gesture now feels layered with irony. I had believed in him entirely, and that blind trust made the sting of betrayal all the sharper. My mind aches with the knowledge that, even then, he was capable of cruelty I was too naive to recognize. Maybe the signs were there all along, but I refused to see them. From the moment I met her, I knew she disapproved of me. Her eyes, icy and calculating, seemed to measure every detail of my appearance, my mannerisms, even the way I carried myself. She never smiled when she looked at me, and her words, though polite on the surface, were always edged with something sharper, something designed to unsettle. She would speak to my husband in German, assuming I didn't understand, tossing tiny poisonous remarks that landed like darts. "She tries so hard," she would say, her tone dripping with condescension. "Almost convincing, isn't she?" And my husband would laugh along, nodding, as though he agreed with her subtle judgments. I never revealed to anyone that I had learned German growing up. It was a language I had mastered in childhood, practiced in secret, and tucked away as a private skill I rarely had cause to use. I could follow every sentence, every nuance, every undercurrent in their conversations, and yet I said nothing. I let them believe I was oblivious, playing the part of the unassuming, sweet, and entirely ignorant wife. My silence became my shield, though at that moment it felt more like a quiet, simmering tension, a storm held just beneath the surface. The contrast between her world and mine was impossible to ignore. She came from old European money, a lineage of wealth and influence stretching back generations. Every word she spoke carried authority, every gesture suggested entitlement. I, on the other hand, had grown up in a modest American household, where comfort and affection mattered more than titles or appearances. Our worlds collided in ways that made me feel perpetually small, an interloper who could never fully belong. Every glance she gave me reminded me of the differences that couldn't be bridged, the social gap that would forever place me on the outside of her carefully curated universe. Yet, even as I felt the sting of her judgment and the weight of their world upon me, I listened. I catalogued every word, every inflection, every plan she casually mentioned in her German conversations. The things they thought I couldn't understand became ammunition in my mind, a private power that only I held. Every insult, every subtle dismissal only fueled my awareness that something far larger was at play. But what I heard on that call wasn't just dislike, it was a plan. I was in the kitchen pretending to chop vegetables, my hands trembling slightly as I tried to focus on the rhythm of the knife against the cutting board. Every fibre of my being was alert, straining to catch the words drifting from the living room. They spoke in German, and this time the conversation was different, calculated, cold, and disturbingly specific. My husband's voice was casual, almost amused, while my mother-in-law's tone carried a sharp precision. "She's so easy to manipulate," she said, and my chest tightened. "She won't fight back when the papers come," he replied. Papers? My mind raced, trying to comprehend what they meant. As I continued my charade, tears pricked at the corners of my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. My grip on the knife was white-knuckled, the simple act of chopping now a silent outlet for the fear and fury coiling inside me. Every word I overheard felt like a dagger, piercing the trust and love I had invested in him, in us, in the life I thought we shared. I realized with a sinking dread that they were plotting to strip me of my rights, to leave me powerless over our shared assets, while laughing at the very thought of my supposed ignorance. I forced myself to breathe, to listen with meticulous attention, committing each phrase, each plan, to memory. They outlined a timeline, discussing when I would be most vulnerable, when I would likely sign without question. Every casual laugh, every assumption about my compliance ignited a fire inside me. I thought back to every time I had overlooked his subtle manipulations, every moment I had dismissed my gut instincts as paranoia. The reality of their intentions hit harder than anything I could have imagined. I continued to move through the kitchen, performing my duties as if I were completely unaware, though every nerve was alight with tension. My hands shook not from weakness, but from the sheer intensity of focus and anger. They were planning to take everything I had a right to, and yet they believed I was too naive to notice, too compliant to resist. Every detail of their plotting, every word spoken in their supposed secrecy, was now mine, stored and ready to be used. They thought I was stupid. They were about to find out otherwise. I spent the next few days moving silently through our home, gathering evidence with the precision of someone who had nothing left to lose. My phone recorded their German conversations whenever I could catch them off guard, and I saved every message, every financial statement, every suspicious document I could access without raising suspicion. Each screenshot, each recording felt like a small victory, a secret layer of protection I was building around myself. My heart raced with a mixture of fear and exhilaration, the knowledge that I was quietly amassing power in a situation where I had been assumed powerless sent a shiver through me. In the quiet of my bedroom, I debated my next move. I could leave now, walk away before they had the chance to strip me of anything, sever all ties and disappear. But a part of me recognized that walking away without leverage would feel hollow, a defeat I could never reconcile with. If I stayed, if I played my cards right, I could ensure that the truth would hit them harder than any confrontation ever could. My mind raced through possibilities, weighing risks and outcomes, imagining the moment when the tables would turn. Every day, I fortified my emotional armor. I rehearsed calm expressions, polite responses, even fake smiles, masking the storm of anger and determination inside me. I reminded myself that no one could touch my resolve, no one could see the fire burning beneath my composed exterior. I confided in no one, not my friends, not my family, not even colleagues. This was my war. Silent and invisible, fought with strategy instead of confrontation, patience instead of impulsive anger. As I reviewed a series of recent transactions, my eyes widened. A secret account, one I had never been aware of, revealed a staggering amount of money he had kept hidden. My stomach dropped, and a chill ran through me as I realized the scale of deception. And then, buried within a set of messages I had inadvertently captured, I discovered her, his mistress. The knowledge hit me like a punch to the gut, a shocking confirmation of everything I had feared. The calm, smiling husband everyone saw was a man living a double life, completely unaware that his wife had already begun preparing for the reckoning he could never imagine. I was in the living room, pretending to organize some papers on the coffee table, while my husband paced the kitchen with his mother. I didn't need to strain my ears. The German words flowed clearly, and every syllable cut through me like glass. "She's temporary," he said, his voice casual, almost amused. "The other one, more sophisticated. Worth the investment." My chest tightened, a knot forming that made it hard to breathe. Investment. Temporary. I had believed in him, trusted him, and in that moment, I realized that trust had been nothing more than an illusion, a tool he intended to discard when it no longer suited him. I sat quietly, acting as though I hadn't heard a thing. I smiled when he glanced in my direction, offered him a light touch on the arm when he walked past, and maintained the air of a loving, obedient wife. Every instinct screamed at me to confront him, to let him feel even a fraction of the betrayal coursing through my veins, but I held back. My advantage was in silence, in the knowledge that he believed me oblivious. I was already gathering pieces, building a silent arsenal of evidence, of truth, of power that he could never anticipate. They discussed the business deal, casually plotting how and when he would leave me once his objective was achieved. The casual cruelty of it, the ease with which he discarded my years of love and loyalty, made my stomach turn. Yet beneath the shock and the hurt, a spark ignited, an ember of resolve that burned hotter with every word. I would not be the passive victim in his story. I would be the author of my own reckoning, and he had no idea how close I already was to orchestrating it. I let them continue, nodding politely, asking innocent questions when addressed, never revealing the storm that had taken root inside me. Every word, every plan, every condescending remark only strengthened my resolve. I imagined the moment when he would realize how completely he had underestimated me, when the tables would turn and the man who thought himself clever and untouchable would find himself exposed. He thought he was using me. But I was already 3 steps ahead. I met with the lawyer in a quiet office downtown, far from the world I shared with him, where I could speak freely without the weight of pretense. The walls were lined with bookshelves, heavy tomes on law and precedent, and a small window let in a grey afternoon light that seemed to mirror the gravity of what we were about to discuss. I laid out everything I had collected: recordings, screenshots, financial statements, suspicious transfers, and the evidence of his other life. My hands were steady, but my heart raced with anticipation. I had never felt so simultaneously vulnerable and powerful. The lawyer listened carefully, nodding occasionally, his face calm but attentive. When I finished, he leaned back and explained in plain terms what I already suspected. His actions constituted not only emotional manipulation, but clear financial coercion. The papers they had planned, the secret accounts, the hidden transfers, all were potential weapons for him. But equally, if documented correctly, they could serve as my shield and my leverage. He outlined my rights, the steps I could take, and the exact ways to catch him in his own lies without alerting him to my awareness. We spent hours devising a timeline, a careful sequence of actions that would ensure I had the upper hand. Every recording would be logged, every transaction time-stamped, every private conversation accounted for. It felt like assembling a puzzle where each piece held immense power. I felt a thrill, an intoxicating mix of fear, adrenaline, and satisfaction. As the plan took shape, I realized how completely he believed in my ignorance, how little he suspected that the very wife he had mocked and plotted against was orchestrating his undoing. I returned home that evening, moving through our apartment as though nothing had changed. I greeted him with warmth, laughed at his jokes, poured him wine, and carried on with a smile that hid every calculation spinning in my mind. Each step, each nod, each touch reinforced the mask I wore, the one that concealed the storm of strategy gathering beneath the surface. My advantage lay in his blind certainty that I remained oblivious, and I savoured the tension of the secret knowledge, the thrill of anticipation building. And then came the night everything exploded. The evening was set in a grand dining room, glimmering with crystal chandeliers and polished silverware, each detail screaming wealth and status. My mother-in-law had invited a carefully curated crowd, friends, colleagues, and distant relatives, all of whom I felt judged by the second I stepped into the room. She smiled, a thin, knowing curve of her lips, and greeted me with that same icy assessment she always wore. My husband stood nearby, casual and charming, completely unaware, or so he thought, of how exposed I already felt. As the dinner began, I listened. Every comment, every subtle jab, every micro-insult was catalogued in my mind. They mocked my education, dismissing the degrees I had earned with exaggerated surprise. They critiqued my clothes, as though the carefully chosen dress I wore was laughably inadequate. My family was ridiculed with cutting remarks disguised as jokes, and I felt the eyes of the entire room press down on me like a weight I could barely bear. Yet, I smiled, nodding politely, letting the room think I was harmlessly meek. My phone rested discreetly in my lap, recording every word, every laugh, every cruel whisper that flew past my ears. I documented it all, not for immediate revenge, but as proof, as the ammunition I would use when the time was right. I moved through the motions of the evening with a calm exterior, hiding the fury building inside, every insult layering onto the fire of resolve. My hands clenched beneath the table, a silent testament to the storm I controlled internally while appearing gracious externally. Then it happened, the comment that twisted something deep inside me. I heard my husband, casually, almost affectionately, describe me as a pretty little maid he planned to discard once his plans with the other woman were complete. The laughter of the room seemed to fade into a dull roar as the words struck me. Years of trust, love, and loyalty condensed into that single devastating phrase, and yet I did not flinch. My heart ached, yes, but beneath it surged a cold clarity. This would be the moment I never forgot, the moment I quietly stored for my silent justice. I excused myself politely. They thought I was crying. I was not. I sat alone in our bedroom that night, the faint hum of the city outside a backdrop to the whirlwind of thoughts in my head. For the first time in months, I allowed myself to acknowledge the truth. I had been underestimated, dismissed, and manipulated, and yet no one, not my husband, not his mother, knew the full extent of the power I carried quietly within me. I had been fluent in German since childhood, a skill I had practiced, perfected, and never revealed because I didn't need to. He never asked about my background in depth, never considered that the quiet, obedient woman beside him might understand every word, every nuance, every insult he so carelessly offered. I replayed their conversations in my mind, imagining how I would respond when the moment came. Every phrase, every sarcastic inflection, every dismissive remark was stored, catalogued, and analysed. I practiced in my mind what I would say in perfect German, each word deliberate, precise, dripping with calm authority. I rehearsed my tone, my pauses, the way my voice would convey control without a trace of hysteria. It was intoxicating to realise how much power lay in something so simple: knowledge, understanding, and timing. I felt it, deep within me, that reclaiming my voice would be more than a confrontation. It would be a reclamation of everything I had been denied, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually. I would no longer exist in the shadow of their arrogance. Each rehearsal strengthened my resolve, and with every imagined declaration, I could feel myself growing taller, surer, stronger. The woman they had dismissed, mocked, and planned against was not the same woman who would face them next. I breathed deeply, steadying my heart, savouring the quiet thrill of anticipation. Patience had become my ally, silence, my weapon. I reminded myself that timing was everything, that the perfect moment would amplify the impact of everything I had prepared. Every step I took, every smile I offered, was part of the choreography that would lead to his downfall. I just had to wait for the perfect moment to strike. The morning of the meeting, I dressed deliberately in a way that appeared modest, calm, unassuming, a wife ready to sign papers to comply without question. My husband never suspected a thing. He arrived with his usual confident swagger, accompanied by his mother, who gave me a perfunctory nod that barely concealed her curiosity. They believed this would be a routine formality, an afternoon of paperwork where I would quietly comply, sign my name, and retreat into the life they had planned for me. What they didn't know was that the room was far from ordinary. Behind me, waiting patiently, were my allies, my lawyer, whose calm authority inspired confidence, a financial investigator who had meticulously tracked every secret account and transfer, and the board member of his company, the very person he had lied to repeatedly, unaware that I had prepared the evidence to expose him. The air was thick with anticipation, but I remained composed, my hands folded calmly in my lap, every sense alert to the moment that would finally arrive. We began with small talk, polite questions, laughter that hid tension. Then I pressed play on my discreet recording device. The room fell silent as my husband's voice filled the air, speaking in German, laughing, mocking, plotting, words of betrayal and contempt meant to remain secret, now undeniable evidence. His smug smile faltered, then disappeared entirely, replaced by a pale, incredulous shock. My mother-in-law's face drained of colour, her previous composure crumbling under the weight of what was revealed. I leaned forward, speaking slowly, deliberately, in flawless German. Every word was clear, precise and calm, my voice carrying authority and cold clarity. I repeated phrases they had thought I couldn't understand, highlighted every insult, every manipulation, every deceit. My husband's jaw dropped as the realization hit. The woman he had dismissed and planned against understood every word and had prepared her response meticulously. The board member nodded, the investigator confirmed figures, and my lawyer outlined the legal implications. Public reversal came swiftly. His business deal collapsed as the board member withdrew support, citing the documented lies and deception. He had gambled with my compliance, assuming I would remain ignorant, and he lost spectacularly. Simultaneously, I filed for divorce with full legal leverage, securing my rights, assets, and a position of strength he had never anticipated. The room was tense, charged, electric, as I observed the culmination of months of patience, strategy, and quiet observation. I sat back, breathing evenly, a calm smile playing across my lips as I watched him process the extent of his miscalculation. Every plan he had made, every casual insult, every act of betrayal had been documented, recorded, and weaponized, not out of vengeance alone, but to reclaim my life and my dignity. And then came the final twist. After the meeting, my lawyer sat with me in a quiet office, laying out the full scope of what I had just achieved. The secret accounts, the recordings, the documented manipulations. All of it gave me a majority claim to our marital assets. I listened, barely blinking, as the details unfolded. The settlement alone was more than I had ever imagined, but the victory went far beyond money. I would walk away with half of his company shares, the house we had lived in, and even the car his mother had once bragged she would never let me touch. Every possession they had assumed was untouchable now belonged to me, a quiet, undeniable reversal of power. I felt no need to gloat, no desire to humiliate him further. My silence was my statement, my victory. It said more than words ever could. I didn't need to curse him, to shout, to confront him with anger. The truth of what he had done, exposed and leveraged, spoke for itself. I left the office with a calm certainty, a sense of balance restored in a way that felt profoundly satisfying. Every step I took, every breath I drew, reminded me that I had reclaimed control over my life, my future, and my dignity. The quiet satisfaction of justice filled me, but underneath it, there was a deeper realization. This was only the beginning of my recovery. The power I had wielded so carefully had secured my freedom, yet I knew that healing would take more than material victory. I needed to rebuild myself, emotionally and spiritually, to step fully into the life I had fought to reclaim. My mind wandered briefly to him, imagining the shock, the disbelief, the quiet humiliation he must have felt. But I felt none of the satisfaction of cruelty. Instead, I felt the serenity that comes from knowing justice had been done without a single word wasted. I walked away from everything he had tried to control, the weight of their judgment lifted, replaced with a quiet, radiant confidence. I had survived their deceit, their plotting, and their arrogance. I had turned their plans on their head with patience, intelligence, and precision. But I wasn't done healing. The first weeks of my new life felt strange and exhilarating all at once. I started therapy, slowly unraveling the threads of fear, doubt, and self-blame that had been woven into me over years of manipulation. Each session was a small revelation, a gentle confrontation with my own resilience and my right to exist fully without apology. I cried more than I expected, but with each tear came a sense of release, a softening of the weight I had carried in silence for so long. I began reconnecting with my family, those I had neglected under the weight of the marriage's tension, and I realized how much love I had denied myself. Hobbies I had set aside, painting, reading, long walks, suddenly felt like rediscovering lost parts of myself. I learned to trust in small ways again, allowing people into my life carefully, while keeping the lessons of past deception close to my heart. Slowly, I forgave myself for staying longer than I should have, understanding that love, hope, and patience had all been weapons my abuser manipulated against me. Each day I reclaimed a little more of my identity, rebuilding a sense of self that had been suppressed and underestimated. I reflected on how they had thought me weak, compliant, and naive. I had survived not only the betrayals and schemes, but also the years of quiet erosion of my confidence. I had learned that survival was about patience, observation, and ultimately using one's underestimated power to emerge stronger. Then I received a message from him. The notification appeared on my phone late one evening, the sender's name immediately stirring a faint echo of old anxiety. I hesitated, taking a breath before opening the message. It was in German, casual, familiar, precisely the way he had always used the language to distance me emotionally while believing I remained ignorant. The words were carefully crafted, full of nostalgia and feigned regret. He begged for another chance, lamenting that he had lost everything, that life had turned against him, now that his schemes had failed. He assumed I would feel sympathy, that I might soften at the familiar cadence of our shared past. I read it twice, letting each sentence sink in, a mix of anger, amusement, and quiet triumph filling me. The man who had plotted my betrayal, who had dismissed me at every turn, who had underestimated my intelligence, now found himself powerless, reaching out like a child hoping for mercy. And yet, I felt nothing but clarity. I knew exactly what needed to be said, exactly how to close this chapter without compromising the strength I had fought so hard to reclaim. I typed a single sentence, deliberate, calm, precise. Du hättest auf deine Worte achten sollen. You should have watched your words. It was neither cruel nor vengeful. It was a measured statement, a reminder that his downfall had been born from his own arrogance and carelessness. I pressed send and leaned back, feeling the quiet satisfaction of finality. His manipulations, his contempt, his sense of superiority, all rendered powerless by the woman he had thought weak. I waited. No reply came. The silence was perfect, a final acknowledgement that the game was over and that I had emerged unbroken, whole and stronger than ever before. I've come to understand that silence is not weakness. It is strategy. For years I had been quiet, underestimated, dismissed, and mocked. And for years I had absorbed their cruelty with a smile that hid the storm inside. But I learned that patience, observation, And careful preparation could be more devastating than anger, more powerful than shouting. Every whispered insult, every condescending glance, every plan to manipulate or discard me became fuel for my eventual reckoning. I didn't need to scream or fight dirty. I only needed to let the truth, meticulously documented and strategically revealed, dismantle the illusion of control they had built over me. The satisfaction of watching it unfold quietly, without theatrics, without melodrama, was intoxicating. My husband and his mother had believed they could manage me, bend me, discard me when convenient. Yet every step they took in arrogance had played directly into the path I had laid. Each action recorded, each word remembered. When the moment arrived, when the trap was sprung and the evidence presented, their carefully curated facades crumbled. The power they assumed was theirs evaporated, leaving only astonishment, shame, and the bitter taste of having underestimated someone they thought was weak. In the days and weeks that followed, I rebuilt not only my life but my identity. I pursued passions, reconnected with loved ones, and embraced the kind of self-respect that had once seemed unattainable under the shadow of their judgment. Healing became my daily practice, and with every step, I grew stronger, wiser, and more certain of my own worth. I no longer needed validation from those who had never truly seen me. I only needed the confidence that I had reclaimed my life, my voice, and my dignity. They thought I didn't understand them. Turns out, they never understood me.